Dear viewers, welcome to the second event of a series of events dedicated to Ukraine at the Cambridge Festival. My name is Andriy Smitsnyuk, and I am a senior teaching associate at the Slavonic section of the University of Cambridge. And I am also an advisor to Cambridge University Ukrainian Society. The series of events about Ukraine at the Cambridge Festival are aiming to raise awareness about Ukraine here in Cambridge and in the UK overall, and also to raise funds for humanitarian help for a fund set up by the Embassy of Ukraine to the UK. The information about it will be in the chat. Today's event is a presentation by Oleksiy Honcharuk, a former Prime Minister of Ukraine. Oleksiy is a lawyer and politician who served as a deputy head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyi, and also as the youngest Prime Minister Ukraine has ever had from August 2019 until March 2020. And since then, Oleksiy has been a distinguished fellow at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Oleksiy, thank you so much for coming to this online event. And before we start, may I just ask you where you currently are geographically?
Hello, Andriy. Thank you very much for invitation. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak to the Cambridge audience. I'm in Kiev, and I'm not far from that terrible place, suburb Bucha, photo from which I believe you have seen recent days. So I'm exactly in the capital of Ukraine, and this is a place in the middle of this terrible war now.
This is absolutely horrible, and and what we will be talking today is the nature of this war and why is it happening. So the title of Mr. Honcharuk's presentation is Ukraine versus Russia, War for Democracy. And Oleksiy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andriy, one more time. And friends, I'd like to build today's conversation more like not lecture, but conversation. So I expect that maybe you will raise your questions and I'll have an opportunity to answer it. But of course, I want to open this evening, this discussion with some of my ideas and understanding of current situation. First of all, it's very important to understand that Ukraine, this war between Ukraine and Russia is not a war for territory. It's not a regional conflict. It's much more important event for I believe all free world, because it's a war for democracy. It's very important to understand why Russia decided to start this terrible war, full-scale invasion against the biggest European country. The real reason was perfectly described by American diplomat George Kennan in 1946. He wrote his long telegram. I believe you perfectly know about this document. And he put in this document, he described the, I wanna read the small part of this document now. The West is the main ideological enemy of USSR. And the Kremlin aimed to breed mistrust, bring division among democratic countries and inside countries, suspicious between parties, social groups, and citizens. Soviet authorities recognize only power and always retreat when meeting stronger opponents. Since then, almost nothing has changed in Kremlin's policy. And still, Russia, as previously USSR, understand only and recognize only power. And still, they are fighting and they have war against not Ukraine, but against civilized world, against United States, United Kingdom, Europe, so all free world, And the main threat to Russia and to its regime, criminal regime, Putin's regime, is a democracy as a concept. Why? It's very simple, because the main threat of Mr. Putin is a democracy in Russia. And the main threat, his main fear, is to have a free society, freedom of speech, freedom of meetings, freedom of beliefs in Russia. So Russian free Russian people is a main threat for Mr. Putin. And for him, Ukraine as a democratic, free and independent country is a source of the main threat, strategic threat. Because for Russian people, you perfectly know that Russian and Ukrainian society have more or less similar culture, and have very close different connections, social connections, economic connections. A lot of relatives live in both countries, so the ties are very close. And it means that communication between nations is very intensive. A lot of people from Ukraine, for example, millions of people from Ukraine are working in Moscow, in like other big Russian cities. And it means that Ukraine is a very dangerous example for Putin's Russia. And main Putin's threat is that Russian people will seek freedom, will want to live in a free society, in a free country, understanding that Ukrainians successfully built a free society. And that's why Putin, for the last 20 years, was trying to build a special relations with our strongmen. He was trying to support Yanukovych during the first Maidan, Orange Revolution, in 2004. He was trying to support Yanukovych one more time during Revolution of Dignity 8 years ago. And when he realized that he failed with its choice, with this support, he decided to destroy Ukraine as a state, because he realized that our society finally choose democracy as a concept, choose to be a part of a free world. And that's why Putin 8 years ago decided to openly invade Ukraine, annex Crimea, and invaded Donbas region. Our freedom and our choice to be a democratic country, final choice to be a democratic country, and to fight for our freedom, fight for elections, fight for rule of law and for reforms and for European integration, is a final and decisive reason why Putin decided to attack and to start the war against Ukraine. Putin thought 8 years ago that people in Ukraine will support him, at least on our southern and eastern part of the country. They expected to take control over at least half of our territory, on the south and on our east. They expected to take control over Kharkiv, Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Dnipro now, and to take control over so-called Novorossiya. They created artificial project called Novorossiya to it was a fake narrative, absolutely fake narrative, but they expected that people will support this idea, and they expected to corrupt local politicians, and they expected that when 8 years ago Ukrainian state was very weak and disorganized because of Yanukovych's escape, he will succeed. But he failed, because civil society in Ukraine was very strong 8 years ago, and civil society organized voluntary military units, dobrobats, so like voluntary military, paramilitary, sometimes paramilitary units. And this organization of this level, very high level of organizational culture of our civil society, played decisive role in successful pushing back and protection of a big part of our land. He successfully created a war, a conflict in Donbass region, especially in Donetsk, Lugansk, and areas around. And they have been using this territory of destabilization to maintain chaos and to maintain this like war, almost Cold War, silent war for all this during all these 8 years. And 8 years ago, the response, the reaction of free world was weak, was very weak. Western politicians, Western leaders were scared to have a conflict, open conflict against Russia. They were oriented on economic relations, saving economic relations with Russia. They decided to save a business as usual. They were care about, first of all, money, not values. And Putin realized that that Western values, this basis of Western civilization, is an empty sound. He decided that values, declared Western values, means nothing in the real life, in the real world, means nothing for European and for United States, United Kingdom, for Western leaders. So it's an empty sound, it's a fake concept. And that's why he decided to play a strategy of division, like George Kennan described. It's like to breed mistrust among people, among countries, among alliances. And he started, and he had been playing, a hybrid war against democracy, trying to undermine trust in the world. He organized military coups on Balkan countries. He organized artificial crises like energy crisis in Europe, migration crisis from Belarus to Poland. They financed and spent enormous amounts of money to support propaganda machine like RT and supporting these fake narratives like anti-vaccination campaigns and so on and so forth. They supported marginal and radical intentions and movements across Europe and United States. They invested in everything possible to make sure that American society and European society will be divided as the division between social groups and citizens will be as deep as possible. They were trying to undermine the trust to elections in the United States. So I believe you know about all this stuff, but I'm trying to show you bigger picture. So Russia were acting on a multiple fronts. They were trying to bribe politicians, to force something, to kill. It's like political murders, for example, one of these tools. And all this game was aimed, the goal of all these games was to undermine trust among and in the Western world, in a free world, to make sure that when he will invade Ukraine one more time, Western world will not be like capable and ready to react, to adequately react. And I believe that he miscalculated. He miscalculated Ukrainian society, Ukrainian state. He miscalculated the free Western world. And he decided to start this war only because he saw that Western world will repeat the mistake have done 8 years ago, because as I already mentioned, Western world reacted very weakly, and this reaction was weak. And he saw that this time the Western reaction will be the same, more or less the same. And so to these reasons, and I want to highlight first the reason why Putin decided to destroy Ukraine, because he realized that Ukraine is a democracy and democracy is a threat, and Ukraine is a very dangerous example to Russian society. And the second part of this reason is that he decided that democracy and free democratic world is weak, and he's not capable to react adequately. These two very important things created a basis for these Putin's actions. Putin is living in a absolutely fake so-called Russian world. This Russian world, based on the idea that Slavic nation plus Orthodox Church, Christian Church, created is a special civilization, is a special Ruski Mir, so-called Russian world. And the Russia Federation as a state, its goal to protect this Russian world is a real area of right values, of a moral rightness, and the goal of Russian world is to Russian state is to protect this Russian world from moral decay, And in his understanding, and in his fake concept and fake world, democracy, diversity, liberal ideology, European values is a so-called is a kind of moral decay. And he's trying to protect this Russian world from Western values, from from this moral decay. And that's why it's very important to understand that the real enemy for Putin is not Ukraine. Ukraine is only a first step, is only an example, is only there is something personal in this war, of course, but the main reason, the deep reason of this war is because Ukraine betrayed Russian world. Ukraine is a more or less the same, is a nation with a more or less similar culture, with a huge part of similar history. And now Ukraine decided to be a democracy, to be a part of this dangerous for Russia world based on Western values, liberal values. And now for Putin is very important to destroy Ukraine, to show to other free nations that Ukraine punished for this betrayal, and to show that he will go as far as we let him go, and he will do everything possible to protect its fake concept about Russian world. And it means that he will not stop in Ukraine, for sure. He will attack all free nations, all nations, all democratic states based on Western values, based on liberal values. Because if he will win in Ukraine, he will demand to NATO, he will demand to Western world to sit with him and to discuss about some agreements about the future division of the world. And of course, there is no any way to negotiate about this future new world order. And it means that he will go further to push and to raise the stakes. And I'm absolutely sure, and I know this because I know this, that he will go further. He will go to Georgia. He will go to Moldova. He will go to Baltic countries. He already invaded, actually, and he already annexed Belarus, because Belarus now, it's not an independent state. It's a puppet, and Lukashenko is not a president. Lukashenko is a puppet, Putin's puppet, and he will go further, even to Poland, Finland, and so on and so forth, to raise the stakes and to force these dangers to them, like liberal world, Western world, to sit with him and to agree about some new world order, to agree with him some future rules, how to live in a new world, how to divide, I don't know, existing countries, how to install some, I don't know, zones of interests or something else. So he will try to change the world, like change the borders, existing borders, using military power. And he will not, I believe that he has no any chance to succeed, because Ukrainians anyway will stop him. We already destroyed his plan A and plan B. And now he is using a tactic of terrorist organization. They are trying to kill civilians. They are trying to destroy cities, peaceful cities, Russian-speaking cities, first of all. They are trying to create humanitarian catastrophes in some regions, to push our government, to force our government to give up, actually, and to sign a capitulation and to agree on their rules. But it's impossible to agree on their rules, because their plans and their goals in this war, they declared, is so-called denazification of Ukraine. It means to kill all Ukrainians. Because if you look into the messages of their propaganda, these messages already changed. If even 2 months ago, they shared the messages among the Russians that Ukrainian nation is okay, it's a lot of good people, and in Ukraine there are only a small part of this so-called Nazi organization, and we should clean the Ukrainian society from these Nazi elements. Now they changed this rhetoric, this message. Now the message so-called sounds like it looks like a huge part of Ukrainian nation already sick with this Nazi virus. It looks like we have to help me with the word перевоспитать. It's like Andrei. It's like it's not educate, but change a mindset, to force to change a mindset, to force to change it's like world view. Yeah. So I will share with you one very important article in the chat, and my strong advice to read this article. This op-ed placed in state-owned media in the internet, and in it you can read what Russia should do with Ukraine, and you will see that this is exactly Hitler's playbook against Jews. And my final message I want to share with you in this launch speech is that I'm sure that Putin is a new Hitler. He's acting exactly like a new Hitler. The basis to his ideology and Russian ideology now is a revenge for the biggest geopolitical catastrophe, as he called the collapse of Soviet Union. You know this, that Putin called the collapse of Soviet Union as the biggest human geopolitical catastrophe of 20th century. Not Second World War, not First World War, not Holodomor, not Holocaust, but collapse of Soviet Union. And it's very important to understand that Russia is trying to find some way for revenge for this catastrophe, because they think that they have lost the Cold War. They have lost, and that's why now they're trying to rethink and to change the results of this Cold War. It's exactly the same situation and exactly the same narrative used by Hitler after First World War. Crimea annexation is the same reason, as the same situation with Sudet Oblast, Sudet area for Hitler, and even the reason to invade Poland, the same Hitler's reason to invade Poland to protect ethnic Germans. The same as Putin used to explain the invasion to Ukraine. It's like to protect Russian-speaking population. And Hitler called this aggression against Poland in 1939 as a police operation. It wasn't a war. He explained to German society that it's not a war, it's just police operation, police operation, to take control over Poland and to protect German ethnic Germans on territory of Poland. Putin's using this same wording. For him, it's not a war; it's a special operation to protect Russian-speaking population. So absolutely the same. Absolutely the same. Hitler was trying to solve Jewish question, and Putin is trying to solve Ukrainian question, because Ukrainian nation is a nation with more or less a similar, very close cultural basis, and the huge part of the similar history is a huge threat for Mr. Putin, because one more time, Ukraine is the biggest Russian-speaking democracy in the world, and at the same time is a neighbor of Russia. So it's very close to Russia. And it's very easy for Russians, it's very easy to compare between life in Ukraine and life in Russia. And I believe that now Russian Federation is a third Reich. They're acting exactly like a Nazi. The Russian army, or Russian troops, Russian soldiers acting exactly like German and Nazi soldiers during Second World War. They're killing civilians. They're torturing. These massive rapes. They're like crazy, absolutely unbelievable humanitarian catastrophes. It's even hard to explain all this terrible situation we have in Ukraine now. And that's why, not because it's morally right, it's morally correct behavior for Western countries and for Western nations, for Western civilizations to help Ukraine, to support Ukraine. Not because it's right, but because it's necessary. I'm sure that this war could be a start of Third World War, because spiral of violence is very understandable concept. Every single day, thousand additional people die. And if 8 years ago, when Putin decided to annex Crimea, from Western world, it was enough just to project the power, just to show that if you will make another step, we will use the power. And Putin, as I already mentioned, recognized only power, and I'm sure that it was possible to protect our land, Ukrainian land. So Western reaction was too weak. They decided to play with sanctions, to dress windows, to save a good face, to do business as usual, and so on and so forth. And that's why we have this terrible war now. And if Western world now will keep this very weak position, will install only partial sanctions, not total economic isolation, will give only light weapons, not real heavy weapons to stop Putin, Europe will have a war, full-scale war on its territory, in Poland, in Moldova, in Romania, in Finland, in Baltic countries, and so on and so forth. And of course, in some stage, it will be inevitable to involve NATO into this battle. Maybe we can discuss it. Maybe you can write some question, and we can discuss some scenarios. I understand that my speech now could sound like provocation, but I'm sure that I'm not exaggerating. I'm here in Kiev in the middle of this terrible war, in the middle of this terrible conflict, but I'm trying to keep my brain cold. I'm trying to be as pragmatic and as objective as possible in this situation. And I'm absolutely sure that if the Western response now will be weak one more time, Putin will understand that he can use more and more and more power, more and more violence. We already know that they are ready to use chemical weapons against Ukraine. In Ukraine, they already used cluster bombs in Ukraine now, and I'm sure that he will, if he will go further, and if in this terrible war, like 100,000 people will die, because now it's a dozen thousand people died. I think that at that moment, at that day, we already have more than 14,000 people dead from both sides. It's incredible. It's even hard to imagine this amount for only 40 days of this war. And now I believe that we will have an escalation of this war, and the next couple of weeks we can have like double this amount, and even maybe more. And every next day, it is harder and harder and harder and harder to stop this war, because a lot of people have lost their homes, their relatives, lovers, like people, very close people, and a lot of people want to have revenge, to do some revenge now. Maybe I should stop on this message. I hope that I successfully provoked you on some questions, and I'm happy to give my answers to them. Thank you, Andrei.
Thank you for your presentation. I think it's very important for people here at Cambridge, but also in the West, to understand the view of the problem from Kyiv. I think that's very important to have Ukrainian voices in Cambridge. And I encourage all of our viewers to submit their questions through Q&A feature on Zoom, but I see there are many questions already. I would like to start with my own question, if possible. So you called the response of the West 8 years ago as weak. How do you estimate the current response, and what do you see as appropriate response at the moment from the West, and more specifically the UK?
First of all, I think that UK and Boris Johnson actually playing a key role now in the Western coalition, and thank you for this. So I think that Poland and UK now are our strongest advocates in the Western coalition, and thank you for this. But guys, it's not enough. It's too little, too late. I'm estimating all sanctions, all reaction by one very simple criteria. Putin still fighting and still killing our people. This is very easy to estimate. 8 years ago, when these like funny, absolutely empty sanctions were installed, it was absolutely easy that these sanctions are useless, absolutely useless, because Putin didn't change his behavior. So if the goal of the sanctions was to change behavior of aggressor, it's obviously that he didn't. And it's obviously that these sanctions were enough to annoy him, but not to stop him. And he continued to collect enormous resources to invest into this death military machine. And now he's using this death military machine against a peaceful nation. And he will use further. So the only visible and credible, I believe, criteria is Putin's behavior. And since Putin fighting and killing people, it's not enough. So all these sanctions is not enough. I believe that in this situation already, it's very complicated to find the right, model of these sanctions. But I'm sure that now Putin showed himself as a Hitler. Absolutely similar, absolutely same playbook, absolutely the same behavior, absolutely the same ignorance to some, some norms, I believe. So he's lying. He's very aggressive. He's very dangerous. He's acting very aggressively. He is openly declare his intention to destroy a nation. What else he should do to have total economic isolation? What else? How it's possible to maintain trading with these guys? I understand the language of money. I understand that everything has price. But we should remember that every single pound, every single dollar you're paying to Putin, he's using to build a death machine to destroy you. That's very easy, because he will try to force you to live another life. Because for him, your way of thinking, your way of living, is a moral decay and is a big threat to his world. It's not Ukraine, one more time. Is a Western values, democracy itself as a concept is a threat to Mr. Putin. Because Russian people could look and to compare their level of life, and probably will want to live in a free country too. And this is a threat to Mr. Putin. And he will raise the stakes, and he will follow this spiral of violence until he will be stopped. So it's absolutely necessary to install now, without any options, total economic, trade, and financial isolation as soon as possible, and to provide Ukraine a real military support, not light weapons, not like machine guns. We need fighters, we need tanks, we need real technique, military heavy technique, anti-aircraft systems to stop him now. Because in the 2 weeks, in the months, maybe it will be too little too late to provide us this weapon, because he will kill all of us. And you should use all these weapons yourself on your territory. It's possible. Putin can mobilize more than 2 million soldiers. And he's going to mobilize anyway, because he can't lose. Because for him, the loss in this war means death. Because weak dictator is dead dictator, is dead strongman. Weak strongman means dead strongman. And he understands this lesson very well. He learned this lesson very well from Gaddafi, from a lot of examples.
And despite what you're saying, there are many Western countries that are still hesitant on implementation of sanctions against Russia. We have a very good question by one of the viewers, Miron, who's saying the West doesn't seem to want to upset Putin. Why? Is the threat of tactical nuclear weapons an excuse?
They're scared.
Threat of opinion?
They're scared. Very simple.
It's a real threat.
Yeah, I'm sure. If you look into the polls in Europe, in United Kingdom, in United States, you will see that the citizens of these countries are much braver than the politicians and political leaders. Are much braver. The level of support providing Ukrainian weapons is enormous, unprecedented, is very high. In all these Western countries, the majority of population, the majority of voters are like showing the strong support of keeping Ukraine weapons to protect itself. And politicians, all these 40 days since war started, they are playing games with the Ukrainian government. I know this. They are playing games. They are telling, okay, we are providing weapons and so on and so forth, but it means only light weapons. Light, it's like, it's not enough. It's impossible to fight against the like fighters with a machine gun, you know. It's just like, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's crazy. And all these games brings us to more and more violence. And as already mentioned, now it's the only reason why politicians still thinking and not so sure about the full-scale support of Ukraine is a fear. Putin did everything and have done everything to seed a fear inside Western societies. And he were more or less successful with it.
And there is also, so you said that the citizens of those countries are much braver than the politicians. And there is also a question here by Agata Nejman. I'm sorry if I mispronounce the name. And it's the question, how can we, the UK citizens, support Ukrainian people? And I would only like to add to that, it's Cambridge Festival hosted by the University of Cambridge. How can, UK citizens specifically, but also academics support Ukraine in the West?
First of all, thank you very much for your support already you providing to our people, to refugees. I know that a lot of invitations from your government, from your citizens to Ukrainian people. Maybe Cambridge can launch some educational program for Ukrainian students. Maybe, Andrei, we can discuss some details. If you want, I will share my ideas with you. I'm discussing the same with my colleagues from Stanford University, because I was invited by Mike McFall last year to join them as a visiting scholar. And we are thinking about opening some opportunities, to create some project together with American University Kyiv to give an opportunity for Ukrainian students to receive a distance education, something like that. So we can discuss a format, but maybe Cambridge Society, Cambridge University can think about some number of special projects for Ukrainian students. But I believe that main support and main help you can provide to us is to, you should push your politicians. You should push your politicians. You should demand them to be more brave, to be braver, and to give more support to Ukraine. But because, like, believe me, just trust me, we still don't have a normal military support from Western countries. We have window dressing. We have a lot of talks. We have a lot of symbolic steps and so on and so forth, but it's not enough. Symbolic step just can't stop fighter, can't stop tank, and we need something to help us to protect our cities, to protect civilians, and to protect and to give an opportunity to our army to kill invaders. It's very important for us.
Okay, understand. And as a language teacher, I noticed that the most common pronoun you used was he, yeah, referring to Putin. But what recent polls by Levada Center, I believe, show in Russia that Putin has great support of Russians as well for everyone in Russia. And therefore, we have another question by a student from Germany, Henrik Flom. Why does it seem like Russian citizens, majority according to polls, support Putin's actions? Of course, there is propaganda, but Russian citizens have the opportunity to research these topics independently on the internet. It's not North Korea. So why do you think that happens?
Perfect question. I'd like to know the answer. I have an explanation, but and I'm a Russian-speaking person. I have been living almost all my childhood next to Russian borders and Belarus borders in Ukraine, but next to Russian and Belarus borders, very close, 40 kilometers in a small town. I graduated from Russian-speaking school. So I understand very well this culture. I understand very well these people. And it's a pity to say this, but I think that a huge part of their society are sick. They have been living in a fake world for the last 20 years. And for all this world, for all these years, during all this very big period of time, their brains were washed by a very strong and creative propaganda machine. And the main narrative of this propaganda machine was that they are it's like колыбель. It's like
lullaby.
How?
Lullaby.
Lullaby. Yeah.
Saying for children to fall asleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Lullaby of moral, of Christian moral, and they are protecting their world from moral decay. Why I started describing these narratives and this story, because it's very important to understand that they are fighting not against Ukraine. They are fighting against Ukraine, democratic Ukraine, because Ukraine betrayed Russian world, because Ukraine decided to be a part of free world, and free world is a danger for their fake world. And I believe that this explanation, this fake Russian world, is very deep in their brains. It's very scary, actually, to realize that dozens millions of people, your neighbors, are living in a world in which you should be killed. I should be killed because of my way of thinking, because I want to live in a free and democratic country. But it's true. And the evidences of this, my explanation, you can see in the internet, in the stories about Bucha and about Russian behavior in Bucha. They are torturing and raping children. How it's possible to explain this? And it's not one example. It's like multiple examples. That's why my explanation is they are sick. A huge part of Russian society are sick. They are living in the world where all of you guys, all of us, we are a threat to their way of thinking, way of living, and this threat big enough to kill us.
That's very tragic. But that also brings another question, and there is a question by a user named K, which is how to encourage Russia, Belarus, China, North Korea, Myanmar, Syria to adopt democracy, capitalism, freedom, independent media, human rights, and rule of law.
Look, I believe that it's very complicated. It should be very complicated strategy with a lot of asymmetric steps. We should support fragile democracy, because maybe you know that for the last 20 years, we have a backsliding of democracy in the world. So democracy is not a very popular idea in the world. And we should realize that democracy is not a rule for the majority of people on the planet. And it's a very dangerous mistake to think that democracy will prevail anyway. Because authoritarian states become stronger, stronger, and stronger. And the population in the authoritarian states are growing much faster than in a democratic world. In a majority of democratic countries in a free world, the population is decreasing. And it's very important to realize these very important trends. And last year, actually, was the worst year for democracy for the last 20 years. 20 years. We should realize it. This is a trend. And why it happened. So it's not like how to make Russia democratic now. The question is how to stop democratic backsliding in the world. And it's much more complicated discussion. And I believe that we should prepare the separate discussion, separate election about this very important topic. I'm ready actually to speak about it. I think I have some ideas, but I believe that we don't have enough time to discuss this very deep topic. My simple explanation that for authoritarian world, for a lot of nations in the world, democracy means weakness. It's a very important idea. Democracy for a lot of nations means weakness. For example, Kazakhstan. For Kazakh nation, democracy means weakness. And they can't afford to have democracy in their state. Because if they are democracy, they will be destroyed by Russia, for example. Think about it. And I'm not joking. It's a very serious topic to discuss. How to make sure that democratic countries are protected. if NATO is scared, if European Union is scared, how to make sure, how to protect democracy? I believe that Cambridge is a perfect place to discuss such kind of topics.
Well, I think that the topic of democracy, well, is obviously a very complicated topic, and also Russian officials, yeah, they oftentimes say, yeah, we don't have real democracy, but democracy is overrated. So they say that yes, we are corrupt, but look at the Western leaders; they're also corrupt. Yeah, democracy doesn't work very well there. So what do you say to those officials?
The problem is deeper. It's not about corruption. The problem based on a deeper level. I have two messages here. First, according to Levada, you mentioned polls, almost a third part of Russian society don't believe that democracies exist. So democracy is a fake concept. It doesn't exist. A third part, so it means like something like 15 million Russians don't believe that democracies exist. It's like Santa Claus. Think about it. It's the first. Second, and it's not only about Russia. It's not about only Russia. It's in Bulgaria, so in a lot of countries with a big Russian influence. This narrative is more or less not relative, but adequate. So, and I've lost my second idea. I'm sorry. English is not I'm not fluent in English, so sorry, guys, for my English. It's not very easy for me sometimes to formulate my idea. So sorry for this. If you don't understand me, or if I should repeat something, or if I should explain something, please let me know. Okay. So let's go further, and when I remember my message, okay. I will come back to my message.
Sure, absolutely. And I think I speak for everyone here saying that your English is absolutely understandable, and we can clearly understand all the ideas you were communicating.
Thank you very much.
But also about the language issue, yeah, you mentioned that you are Russian speaking, and there is a question from Colin Barnes from Cambridge. Correct me if I'm wrong, Russia recognized the existence of Ukraine as a sovereign state. They therefore must have known that the invasion of Ukraine was illegal. Was the reason for this invasion the false view that the existence of separatists in Donetsk had to be supported? Yeah, the eastern provinces based their view there was discrimination against Russian speakers. So I think that the question is, how do you think justified is this narrative of protecting Russian speakers?
First, there is no problems for Russian-speaking people in Ukraine at all. No single problem, even no discomfort. I'm a Russian-speaking person. I was a prime minister. Our president is a Russian-speaking person from a Russian-speaking city, Kryvyi Rih. It's not a problem at all, just at all. 8 years ago, when Russia invaded Ukraine, annexed Crimea and invaded Donbass, some part of our society were very active to protect and to support Ukrainian language. That's true. And a couple of laws, a couple of norms was created to support Ukrainian language. For example, that Ukrainian language should be main and should be used in state-funded institutions. For example, state-funded schools, state-funded universities. But it's a normal policy, I believe. So if the state paying for something, the state can demand some, I don't know, criteria, yeah, these institutions should meet. And it's absolutely fake narrative. And Russia used its very big influence and very big presence by their media, by their TV channels in Ukraine to create these fake narratives, fake stories about some problems among Russian-speaking people. But it's a totally fake problem. There is no any problems with Russian-speaking city. The same situation with a religion. We don't have a problem with religion. The same situation with so-called people of Donbass, before Russia started invasion, we never had conflicts, military conflicts on our territory. Just never. Ukraine never attacked neighbors, never invaded neighbor territories, never had even some military conflicts in our territory. Never, just never. And that's why it was shock for us to have this example, to have this precedent 8 years ago. We were not ready. Nobody was ready. And that's why actually now Russia failed, because now we are ready. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough weapons. We have very weak and scared Western allies and partners, but we are fighting successfully against the second biggest and strongest army military force in the world. That's my answer.
I understand. I completely agree with you on that. So Ukraine is, it's clear to see that Ukraine has success in defending its territory. But what do you see as the next step? So there is a question from Mark Wainwright. What should Ukraine's and the West's goal be in the present conflict if all goes well? Should it include taking back Crimea and the previously occupied areas of the Donbass? Is that realistic? And is it dangerous in terms of the response it would provoke from Putin?
Look, it's a complicated question. One more complicated question. I believe that we should divide this long story to some stages. First, to clean the territory of Ukraine from Russian troops. This is the main task for all of us. To show to the world, to the whole world, to China, other possibly aggressive countries, that it's unacceptable to use military power to change borders, to kill people. This is step number one. This is a stage number one. It's absolutely necessary to do as soon as possible. I believe that it's impossible to have a peace in Europe since Putin, until Putin leading Russian Federation. I can't imagine this scenario in which Putin is still ahead of Russian Federation and we have a peace in Europe. I can't imagine this. I'm afraid that we are on very late stage of this crisis. And it means that anyway, Western world now and Ukraine now should gather I hear some sounds. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think I just moved a piece of paper. So
okay. I just think that maybe it's some technical problem. So I think that now it's very important to gather our to gather together and to realize that free Russia, democratic Russia, is the only possible good scenario for all of us. But I'm afraid that it's not the best place to discuss the possible ways how to achieve this goal. I just want to share that and share my message, my idea that we should be focused on creating all possible conditions to make sure that Russian nation, Russian people, normal Russian people, will have an opportunity to fight for their freedom inside Russia. That's what I think about this. But on the first stage, on the first step, it's very important to protect Ukraine as an example, to show the example to the world, and not to allow Putin to raise the stakes. This is an absolutely necessary step and necessary task to speak strategically then.
Okay, I understand. But so you were saying that the West also should create opportunities for Russian people, to advocate for democracy, etc., in Russia. How realistic do you think it is at this moment? How realistic do you think it is that somebody will stage a coup d'etat in Russia and overthrow Putin? What do you see? Do you see the end of the war not from the Ukrainian side but from Russian side?
I want to answer your question with another question. Recall a year before collapse of Soviet Union. You know that a lot of people, the majority of people, even United States or like Western intelligence services, they didn't expect that Soviet Union would collapse. So we have the same situation. So now we are living in absolutely new epoch, historical epoch. And nobody knows what will be even in a week. Even in a week. Maybe tomorrow morning we will open the newspaper and read that Putin is dead. Maybe we will read in this newspaper, morning newspaper, that Putin decided to use nuclear weapon against London because London is aggressive. And there is no any sense to use it against Ukraine because the real threat is London and Washington. It's possible, guys. And I want to share with you that one more time, Putin is a new Hitler. Look into his logic. Look into his playbook. He's using the same logic, the same playbook as Hitler used. So now is everything's possible. Maybe Chinese will organize, I don't know, some maybe Russian elite will organize something to kill Putin. Maybe Putin will decide to use nuclear weapons. Nobody knows. But what we should know and what we should realize, that if, like Churchill said, if you're choosing between shame and war, and you choose it, shame, you'll have war and shame at the same time. That's exactly the mistake Western leaders made 8 years ago. They chose shame. And now such politicians like Obama, like Merkel, should be ashamed, I believe. And some of Western politicians already realize it, like President of Germany. He already recognized his mistakes. And I'm sure that a lot of politicians will recognize their mistakes. Maybe not now, maybe later, but they will recognize, they already recognize their mistakes. And now it's critically important not to repeat these mistakes, not to show him the fear, not to show him that you are scared. Because if you are scared, you already have lost. This is what I know, like 100%. And about scenarios, ever since possible, we are living in a new historical epoch, full stop. We are living in a new historical epoch. Maybe it's a beginning of a third world war, maybe. There are a lot of signs to support this conclusion. For example, you know that now we probably will have a civil war in Bosnia in a couple of maybe even weeks, maybe months. It's a very complicated situation in Bosnia now. Maybe you know that Serbia decided to use military troops against Kosovo. It's a very complicated situation on Balkans now. You have seen that Azerbaijan decided to use force against Armenia because of example. And it's only a beginning. All nations which has some advantages in a military force, in a military power, will use this opportunity, will use it to solve their territorial and historical problems. If they will look into Russia and they will realize that it's possible, it's acceptable to use military power in the 21st century. That's very my simple and I believe terrible conclusion.
It's a little bit depressing conclusion, I have to say, but I understand your point. But if everything is possible, is peace also possible? Do you see a truce happening? And if between Ukraine and Russia, and if yes, there is a question by Miron: what minimum security guarantees are acceptable to Ukraine if it accepts to become a neutral country?
Dear Miron, maybe you know the history about Budapest Memorandum, yeah? When Ukraine gave up its military weapons, third in the world military potential, and received the guarantees from United States, UK, China, Russia. So the lessons learned, and that's why only possible guarantees is something very understandable and clear, that in case Russia will attack one more time, it will immediately means the war with NATO or with United States, United Kingdom, Turkey, or some other guaranteed countries. Only this can be more or less relative explanation and solution for Ukraine. Only understanding that in case Russia will attack one more time, we will have direct military support from all these countries. Because otherwise, it's empty guarantees. And we already had this example, very painful historical lesson in the history of our country.
I think Miron is commenting that the Budapest Memorandum was not worth the paper it was written on. So
I agree with you. I've read the question. I can what is being negotiated. I don't believe that these negotiations are useless. Are useful. I don't believe. I don't think that it's possible to negotiate about something with Russia. So, of course, we should use all possible opportunities to stop all these crazy murders, I believe. But for Russia, all this negotiating process is only a window dressing, is only to win some time. And I believe, I'm sure that the only possible moment when with Russia, it's possible to negotiate about something is when you have a strong hand, and it's when you already destroyed a huge part of their army, and when they understand that there is no any way to continue this war. We are not there yet. Unfortunately, we are not there yet. And since Russia lost at least I don't know, 20,000 people, soldiers dead, I don't believe that it's possible to negotiate about something successfully. I hope that that I'm wrong. I hope that I'm wrong, but I'm sure that there is no any reason to speak with Russians until you don't have a strong position. You don't have a real strong hand on the table.
Understand. I would like to read then a message from Paul Brown. The news from the NATO summit sounds encouraging, indicating that supplies of heavy weapons to Ukraine will be increased, but sanctions are still too weak. Perhaps EU members, the UK and the United States, should have to pay a sum to Ukraine equal to any payments made to Russia for fossil fuels, estimated to be 1 billion a day. Do you see anything like that happening? And also, my personal question, do you see the assets that are being frozen in the West, those assets that belong to Russian oligarchs, Russian state, being used for Marshall Plan for Ukraine?
I think that these assets, it's not about Marshall Plan. It's about contribution. It's about compensation of our losses and of all this damage. It's not about Marshall Plan. It's our resources. It's our money, our assets. We need to rebuild our economy and recover our. So it's like it's a damage they have done to our economy, land, and so on and so forth. So it's not Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan, it could be additional plan, economic plan, to incentivize our economic growth, to help us to grow and to make reforms and to encourage our economy to grow faster. So I think that these funds, frozen funds, it's not about Marshall Plan at all. It's like separate. Like frozen assets is to cover damage, and Marshall Plan, it could be discussed additionally as an additional measure. About NATO, I think that it's still it's much better than before, but one more time, it's too little too late. We will see in a week. I want to see a real changes in not only on a level of declarations, but on a level of real life. I'm sorry, because we already received the declarations about, for example, fighters from Poland. And as a result, nothing. In the end of the day, nothing. We received nothing. So I don't trust NATO. I don't trust Western politicians and their declarations. And that's why I'm still worried about this. So when I will see the heavy weapons, the real weapons in Ukraine, maybe I will change my opinion. But at that moment, I think that NATO is playing a very weak game. And on a level of messages, on a level of declarations, they are trying to look stronger. But in a real life, they are weak and scared. And I don't see any reasons to change my opinion at that moment.
Understand. And I think we will be finishing soon, but I personally have a question about Belarus. You called it a puppet state, and I think a lot of people do call it a puppet state, and it's a satellite of Russia. But in your opinion, why hasn't it joined the attack of Ukraine as much as it could in terms of sending troops to Ukraine? And do you see that happening in the future?
Lukashenko decided to send troops to Ukraine, but his generals, his middle level military officers showed to him their position that they don't want to participate in this war. I think that during the first week of this war, of this invasion, it was possible to force these soldiers, Belarus soldiers, to participate. But on the third and fourth week, these people, Belarus soldiers, already realized that Russian troops are weak and that Ukrainian troops and Ukrainian army is very strong and efficient. They realized. And they realized that it's impossible to take control over Kyiv. It's impossible to capture our capital. It's just impossible. And they have seen that Russian generals, for Russian generals, a Russian soldier is a meatball. Is only a resource. And the value of a soldier's life is zero for Russian soldiers. And Belarus soldiers realized that they don't want to participate in this stupid and terrible war. That was a real reason why. So the position of a middle level military officers was the real reason why Belarus avoided this participation. Lukashenko did everything to participate. And he's scared of Putin. He is totally dependent on him.
I understand. I mean, it's good to know that there are some people who are in Belarus who are still more sane than. Yeah.
I wish Belarus people and Russian people are different on a basic level, on a conceptual level, because during all these 30 years since Soviet Union was collapsed, Russian people brains were washed by narratives that they have lost from Cold War, that are losers and they need a revenge. So Russian people are seeking revenge. and Belarus are not. Belarus people they are not living in a world in which they should participate some revenges. They feel okay with their territory. They feel okay with their like national state. So they are different on a conceptual level, on a basic level.
Understand. I think we are running out of time. You've already given your message to broader sense to broader UK community and academic community, what they can do. So I think that is also very good. And do you have any final remarks before we finish?
First of all, thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure and honor to speak to you. Second, we are in the same boat. So I'm not exaggerating that we are maybe on the early stage of the Third World War. I'm sure about this. And I'm sure that we should together, it's not a problem of Ukraine, it's a problem of all free world, because it's a war against democracy, against our way of thinking, a way of living. All of us, we should use all our opportunities to encourage our politicians to fight against Putin, this new Hitler, now, as soon as possible. This is my main message. And I think that we should realize that nobody is protected now. I mentioned that maybe tomorrow Russia will decide to use military power, nuclear power against your capital. I'm not joking. It's not funny. It's possible. And nobody expected that Putin will decide to invade Ukraine, because in his world, in his narrative, Ukrainian nation is a brother nation to, or sister nation to Russia. And now they are killing thousands, these like people from a sister nation every single day. They are raping children. And 2 months ago, 5 months ago, when I did my open lecture in Stanford University called Ukraine is Russia, War for Democracy, I told to my colleagues from academia that I don't believe that Putin will attack Ukraine. I made a mistake. And I thought that Putin is a monster. He's a very bad man. He's a strong man, crazy strong man, but he is not crazy enough to openly attack Ukraine, to kill more than 40,000 people in a month. I made a mistake. Now I understand very clearly. It's very serious situation. If he will decide that he is losing, he will go as far as we let him go. We should just realize it. And his real enemy is not Ukraine. His real enemy is Washington, London, Berlin. It's like Western free world. Realize it.
That is very, very well said, very well put. I want to thank you very much for coming here and speaking. And I appreciate you speaking out from Kyiv, and thank you much for coming here. For our viewers, I thank you for watching this webinar, and Please consider supporting Ukraine financially by donating to withukraine.org, or housing Ukrainian refugees using cambridgeforukraine.uk, or support Ukraine academically, registering with the Ukrainian Global University. Thank you so much.
Thank you for attention and support, guys. Bye.
Okay.
Peace to your house. Героям слава.